We all worship them on the silver screen, Frank Sinatra's charm, Bette Davis's fire, or Marlon Brando's raw rebellion. But behind that classic MGM glamour lay a darker reality. Your favorite Golden Age icons were raging textbook narcissists who demanded the world kneel to their massive egos, ready to strip away the studio PR and expose the backstage tyranny of these legendary stars. Hit that subscribe button now, because today we're revealing the shocking hidden dark side of the Hollywood royalty you thought you knew. Frank Sinatra, the iron-fisted king of Hollywood. Frank Sinatra ruled Hollywood like a monarch who never doubted his crown. As the chairman of the board, Frank operated under the assumption that the entire world was on his payroll. He demanded absolute loyalty deference and total obedience. Anyone who crossed him paid a heavy price. Leading his infamous Rat Pack, Frank traveled with an entourage that hung on his every word. They laughed at his jokes and lived by his mercurial moods. Frank alone decided when the party started and when the music stopped. To old Blue Eyes, ordinary rules simply did not apply. He treated waiters, stagehands, and working-class folks with sharp disdain, and a minor mistake could trigger his legendary explosive temper. Frank got people fired just for doing their jobs the wrong way. He was especially ruthless toward the press. Desperate to control his own myth, he once famously sued a biographer to kill an unauthorized book before it even hit the shelves. Frank loathed being questioned, scrutinized, or exposed. Yet to those who stayed in his good graces, Frank could be extraordinarily generous, showering loyal companions with lavish gifts and cold cash. But that legendary kindness always came with strings attached. You crossed him once, and you were dead to him. Frank Sinatra possessed the generational talent to back up his towering pride, matched only by an ego the size of Manhattan. He demanded to be treated like royalty, and Hollywood happily knelt. Marlon Brando, the brilliantly defiant rebel of the screen. Marlon Brando is rightfully remembered as one of cinema's greatest titans, but he also evolved into one of its most maddening enigmas. Early on, Brando revolutionized Hollywood with raw, visceral performances that changed acting forever. Yet as massive fame solidified, he grew to despise the very industry that crowned him. Acting became a chore beneath his intellect. On set, he notoriously refused to memorize scripts, forcing crew members to hold up cue cards just out of frame. In his mind, he was simply too important to study lines. Brando's defiance extended to the box office, where he demanded astronomical paychecks for minimal effort. He routinely showed up late, left early, and clashed with directors rewriting scenes on a whim. He viewed Hollywood films with open cynicism, looking down on the projects that made him wealthy. As the years rolled on, Brando grew visibly bored. He neglected his physical appearance, let his weight balloon, and largely stopped trying, yet still demanded top billing and absolute reverence. He genuinely believed his iconic name alone was worth millions. While Brando possessed a deeply compassionate side, particularly regarding social justice, his monumental ego ultimately swallowed his work ethic whole. He treated multi-million-dollar productions like personal playgrounds that should bend to his every caprice. Brando was a cinematic giant who came to believe the world owed him everything, leaving behind a legacy where his defiance became just as legendary as his genius. Charlie Chaplin, the iron-fisted perfectionist behind the tramp. Charlie Chaplin captivated the world as the lovable little tramp, a sweet, bumbling character who melted hearts globally. Yet behind the lens, Chaplin was a fiercely demanding control freak who ran his cinematic empire with absolute, unchecked authority. He wrote, directed, starred in, and even composed the musical scores for his films, refusing to trust anyone else with his creative vision. He was a relentless perfectionist who pushed his cast and crew far past their breaking points. During the production of City Lights, he notoriously forced an actress to repeat a simple two-word line over 300 times before he was satisfied. Chaplin was entirely indifferent to human exhaustion. Only his artistic vision mattered. He would tear down entire expensive sets and reshoot completed scenes on a sudden whim, forcing crew members to work grueling hours. In his mind, his way was the only acceptable way. Chaplin often treated friends and colleagues as mere instruments to be utilized and cast aside. Those in his inner circle spoke of an immense pride and an insatiable psychological need for total control. He demanded unswerving loyalty, but offered little genuine warmth in return, viewing himself as a solitary genius answerable to no one. While his brilliant artistry brought joy and laughter to millions, Chaplin ruled his private kingdom with an iron fist, ensuring everyone lived and worked strictly by his rules. Bette Davis, the indomitable queen of Hollywood real estate. Bette Davis was a Hollywood powerhouse with a legendary will of iron. She famously went to war with studio bosses, directors, and co-stars alike to protect her artistic vision. Bette believed she was always right, and she rarely proved otherwise. On set, she micromanaged every detail, aggressively arguing over scripts, lighting, and camera angles. Trusting her own fierce instincts above everyone else's, she could be dazzlingly brilliant and utterly impossible in the exact same hour. To her peers, Bette was a demanding force of nature who expected absolute respect and surrendered no ground. She also knew how to hold a grudge. Her lifelong venomous feud with Joan Crawford became Tinseltown legend. Bette openly despised Crawford, viewing her as a mere glamour girl beneath her own serious acting caliber. Bette wanted to be recognized as the greatest, full stop. She fought ruthlessly for the best roles, often leaving younger actresses feeling completely crushed in her wake. Bette never softened with age. She remained sharp, proud, and fiercely territorial of her legacy. Living by her famous maxim, "Old age ain't no place for sissies," she refused to let anyone dim her fire. While Bette Davis delivered some of cinema's most unforgettable performances, she ruled her sets like an absolute monarch who tolerated no rivals. Her monumental talent was wrapped in an even larger ego. She knew she was great, and she dared anyone to disagree. Joan Crawford, the steely architect of Hollywood glamour. Joan Crawford didn't just stumble into stardom. She manufactured herself into a silver screen goddess through sheer, unadulterated willpower. Decades before modern marketing, Joan ran her career like a Fortune 500 company, viewing her persona not just as a person, but as a meticulously curated global brand. Absolutely nothing was left to chance. On set, she demanded utter perfection, ruthlessly auditing every camera angle and key light to safeguard her legendary visage. Desperate to stay on top, Crawford's intense need for control spilled heavily into her domestic life. Infamous family accounts painted a harrowing picture of a woman utterly consumed by cosmetic order and flawless appearances behind closed doors. She required endless admiration. Her brutal, decade-spanning warfare with arch-rival Bette Davis became the stuff of Hollywood legend. Neither titan was willing to cede an inch of the spotlight. Yet Joan harbored a unique symbiotic bond with her public, personally answering mountains of fan mail for decades. But that loyalty ultimately fed an insatiable hunger to be adored. Joan weaponized self-control as both a shield against irrelevance and a dagger against rivals. She bent every single facet of her existence to serve her own myth, desperate to be worshipped, remembered, and utterly irreplaceable. She maintained an iron grip on her own legend until the final curtain fell. Steve McQueen, the insecure king of Hollywood cool? Steve McQueen was universally hailed as the ultimate king of cool. But behind that detached ice blue gaze lurked one of the most viciously competitive egos in cinema history. McQueen absolutely loathed playing second fiddle. When forced to share the spotlight with another heavyweight, panic and paranoia set in. On the set of The Magnificent Seven, he was infuriated by his sparse dialogue compared to the film's actual lead, Yul Brynner. To sabotage his co-star, McQueen resorted to shameless scene-stealing tactics, fiddling with his Stetson and rattling shotgun shells in the background to hijack the audience's attention during Brynner's close-ups. Years later, his insecurity escalated into a legendary showdown with Paul Newman on the towering Inferno. Driven by an obsessive rivalry, McQueen literally counted the lines in the script. Upon discovering that Newman had exactly 12 more lines than he did, he forced the screenwriters to pad his dialogue to match while successfully hijacking the movie's coveted final line. Newman was so deeply repulsed by the petty behavior that he openly branded McQueen a coward. McQueen didn't care. He chose roles and managed his career entirely to feed his obsession with star status, turning down cinematic masterpieces just to protect his carefully manufactured image. He projected an effortless, fearless masculinity on screen, but in reality, he was a deeply insecure man who measured his self-worth in line counts, billing, and frames of screen time. Orson Welles, the tragic isolation of Hollywood's lone genius. Orson Welles was an undisputed cinematic genius, and he knew it better than anyone. He directed, co-wrote, and starred in the masterpiece Citizen Kane at the tender age of 25. That monumental early triumph convinced him he was irrevocably the smartest man in any room. Consequently, Welles routinely talked down to fellow artists, dismissing industry legends as mere fools. He once notoriously called the universally revered Laurence Olivier unintelligent and even branded Charlie Chaplin as egotistical, a fascinating bit of irony given his own towering self-regard. Welles firmly believed his creative instincts were infallible. Demanding total autocratic control over every single frame, major film studios found him impossible to manage and even harder to please. Welles would pick bitter fights, intentionally delay productions, and arrogantly ignore studio boundaries, believing standard rules only applied to lesser talents. His confidence was as volcanic as his legendary temper. He loved holding court at lavish dinners, endlessly lecturing anyone within earshot. While peers deeply admired his visionary brilliance, they ultimately grew exhausted by his suffocating vanity. As Hollywood inevitably turned its back on him and his career slowed to a crawl, his ego remained stratospheric. He bittered, blaming an uncultured industry for failing to keep pace with his mind. Orson Welles fundamentally reshaped modern cinema with his bold bravado, but he ultimately viewed his gifts as a license to treat everyone else like children. In his own mind, he died a master among infants. Mae West, the audacious architect of her own monument. Mae West constructed an entire entertainment empire around a single glittering subject herself. Decades ahead of her time, Mae wrote her own suggestive dialogue, selected her own dazzling wardrobe, and tightly controlled every single frame she graced. She engineered her on-screen persona to ensure she was always the smartest, funniest, and most alluring person in the room. Mae absolutely refused to share the spotlight. If a scene didn't paint her in a flattering light, she rewrote it on the spot. Mae firmly believed in her own comedic genius and vocalized it, often famously quipping, "I used to be Snow White, but I drifted." That brand of unapologetic bold braggadocio was her signature style. On set, she effectively ran the entire show, regardless of who sat in the director's chair. She demanded that her co-stars remain firmly in the background, serving as mere props to her wit. Mae micromanaged her lighting, camera angles, and those legendary double entendre one-liners with obsessive precision. Behind that sultry, slow-talking facade was a ruthless businesswoman who loathed being upstaged. Mae West elevated self-advocacy and vanity into a highly profitable art form. While she was undeniably clever and broke barriers for women in cinema, she approached every movie as a grand monument to her own divinity. She demanded to be the star, the author, and the ultimate legend all at once, and Hollywood happily let her have her way. Thank you for watching today's video. If you find the content interesting or useful, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the latest videos. Your support is the biggest motivation for us to continue creating better quality content every day. What do you think about today's topic? Leave a comment below so we can discuss it together. See you in the next video. Have a great day.